My name is Bai Yu, and I am a superpower. The superpower is called the law of protection. Buy drinks 10 times, and the last time will definitely be another bottle. Skipping classes 10 times in college, the 10th time will definitely not be called. One day, I was hit by a car for the 10th time. Keywords of the novel. Age of the Heroes, no pop-ups for 10 consecutive guarantees. Age of the Heroes, 10 consecutive guarantees. TXT Complete Collection Download, Age of the Heroes, 10 consecutive guarantees. Latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Good morning, guaranteed person. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Chapter 1. Good morning, guaranteed person. In May, the weather gradually gets hot. Bai Yu walked into the snack bar, opened the refrigerator, took out a bottle of Uni President brand iced black tea beverage, and casually twisted it open to take a sip. Many. For yuan. The shop boy, who was playing with his phone, didn't even look up and rushed to answer. Bai Yu was about to take out his phone to make the payment when he suddenly opened the bottle cap and glanced at it. I won the prize. Oh, is this the 10th time I've bought a drink? The shopkeeper took the bottle cap and glanced at it, then raised his eyebrows slightly and said, "You're lucky. Would you like to take another bottle, or is this one free of charge?" Bai Yu scanned the code to make payment and said, "Give me another bottle." "Take it yourself." The shopkeeper buried his head and continued to tinker with his phone. He clicked on the screen, focused his attention, and stared at the dazzling light effects on the screen. He muttered, "Come out, come out." He slapped his thighs heavily and covered his head with both hands, feeling extremely regretful. Damn it. It's not coming out again. It's a terrible game, not even a guarantee. After finishing her drink, Bai Yu glanced at the other person's phone screen and raised her eyebrows slightly, saying, "Chronicles of Heroes." The shopkeeper dropped his phone and took a sip of herbal tea, his face full of gloom, saying, "Isn't that right? This game has been quite popular lately, and I've been throwing in more than a week's salary. I insist on not shipping, and playing a game is like gambling. There's no guarantee mechanism, not to mention the highest rarity of 5 stars, not even 4 stars. To be precise, it's not even as good as gambling. Gambling still has profits and losses, and this game is losing money by winning gold and drawing cards." Bai Yu smiled and said, "I can't do anything about 5 stars. I can give you one of 4 stars, why don't I give it a try?" The shop boy looked over with suspicion and said, "Really? This is a lucky game, and I still have some stock. You can give it a try. If it really happens, I'll give you a gift of yushi." "No, I don't smoke again." Bai Yu took her phone and didn't do any prayer ceremony or preach any mysticism, so she didn't even watch the flashcard animation. The shopkeeper covered his face and felt that it was hopeless. Xian didn't change his mind, but what if it worked? You're not sure if being so casual is. The screen burst with a golden flash, and the entire shipment scene was extremely gorgeous, blinding the eyes of the titanium alloy chief dog. The shop boy widened his eyes in disbelief and suddenly jumped up. Sleeping slot. Out, out, really out. 5-star swimsuit. Bai Yu handed the phone back to its rightful owner and said, "I originally only planned to draw a 4-star. These 5 stars seem to have been used as a tool when I helped Lao Yang draw cards last time." The shopkeeper raised his phone like a treasure and his eyes lit up, saying, "Brother, you've broadened your horizons today. You've met the big shot of the European Emperor." "Don't, I'm not the Emperor of Europe." "The Emperor of Europe has a very short lifespan," Bai Yu joked. "You keep playing, I'll leave first." "Hey, take your time. Leave the store and stand by the roadside waiting for the bus." Bai Yu opened another bottle of iced black tea that she had taken out, opened the bottle cap, and behind the red cap, there was a black font with 4 plain words written. "Thank you for your patronage." The first bottle. Missed. Shaking his head, he couldn't say he was discouraged, and his expression was a plain habit. When buying drinks, whether or not the first 9 bottles win, the 10th bottle will definitely win. It's not just about buying drinks, it's also true when I was a child and helped my family buy scrapers. Only when I bought the 10th one can I get a prize. From memory onwards, this kind of thing has been accompanying his life. Bai Yu has become accustomed to this kind of thing, and he is very certain that he is a superpower, although this superpower is not an active skill, but a passive trigger. In middle school, I was thinking about how to use this superpower to give it a name. I didn't think of a good name for it until I was exposed to mobile games in high school. He decisively called this ability guaranteed. 10 consecutive guarantees. However, unlike the traditional concept of 10 consecutive guarantees, his guarantee is a definite guarantee that is not transferable by luck or personal will. Taking exams as an example, the results of the first 9 exams are all based on one's own performance. By the time of the 10th exam, the content on the test paper must be something he can do, so it is easy to get high scores. His academic performance is not considered outstanding, and he may not make it into the top 10 in the class, but with this ability, he can occasionally achieve first and second place in the academic year. But this approach is too conspicuous. Since middle school, I have decided to hide this guaranteed ability and have to undergo a precise score control every 10 exams. In high school, I occasionally raised my grades to the top 10 in my class, and then calculated the number of times accurately before the final exam. I skipped a full grade final exam, putting the 10th time ahead of the college entrance exam. If it weren't for worrying about being questioned for cheating if he directly became the top scorer in the college entrance examination, he thought it shouldn't be difficult to get the first place in the province. It's really difficult to pass 99% of the original questions. He was admitted to a provincial key university with excellent results in the college entrance examination, which can be considered as a milestone in his life. This is a successful case of using one's superpowers to contribute to life. Unfortunately, this minimum guarantee capability occasionally exceeds expectations. For example, he was involved in a bank robbery earlier this year. How small the probability is, as ordinary people know, it's unlikely to happen once in their lifetime, but he did. The other party consisted of 3 people holding firearms, and everyone in the hall dared not move. One of the robbers stumbled while walking, and his gun fell directly into Bai Yu's hand. Now he couldn't remember and couldn't stand it anymore. Quickly pick up the gun and pull the trigger to counterattack. He had never used a firearm before, and when he pulled the trigger, the gun fell apart without any bullets. At this moment, the security guard also realized that the guns in their hands were fake. They decisively swung chairs and rushed forward to subdue the robber. By the time the police arrived, the dust had already settled. Bai Yu also received a banner of bravery and a 20,000 yuan government bonus as a result. But this cannot solve the small question mark in Bai Yu's heart. He began to review the matter. Due to family reasons, he has been running to the bank with his family every month since junior high school to make deposits and remittances. He only comes less frequently after entering college. However, during winter vacation, he encountered this kind of robbery at the bank, which made him very puzzled. From the results, it was undoubtedly a good thing. What Bai Yu was puzzled about was that it was really great, which made him feel that maybe his superpower had been activated. These things have happened before. When I went to the bank to handle business, I occasionally met some bank staff who gave me some gifts, and even luckily I could buy the treasury bond that flowed out. Most of them were petty favors. He didn't take them to heart, so he didn't calculate the number of times I went to the bank, but this could not be the 10th time I went to the bank. After carefully questioning her family and calculating the frequency, Bai Yu suddenly realized. He suddenly realized that this was his 100th time coming to this bank. Then triggered 100 major guarantees. Bank robberies. When Bai Yu realized this, he felt incredibly overgrown. He didn't expect his superpowers to take effect in such places. This is not a guarantee, but big bottom line. This means that the 10th time there is a minimum guarantee, something will come out of it, which is completely unpredictable. This passive skill called guaranteed minimum can definitely bring good luck to the parties involved, but the way it brings good luck may not be what the parties want. Imagine what would have happened if Bai Yu had not decisively pulled the trigger and fired during the robbery, or if there were really bullets inside. At that time, he went to the bank with his cousin, who was still pregnant. If something happened, he would be guilty. It may be good for oneself, but it may not necessarily be good for those around us. If this is an active skill, Bai Yu will definitely turn it off and use it when needed, but unfortunately it is not. So, after graduating from college, despite the opposition of his family of over 20, he left Nandu and chose to go to Pingcheng to find a job. On the surface, it was said that there were many job opportunities in big cities and he could work hard, but in reality, he did not want to cause trouble for his family. By the way, it is also possible to avoid blind dates with family members. According to the principle of minimum guarantee, as long as there are 10 consecutive blind dates, the girl who has reached the 10th time will definitely be an excellent marriage partner who fully meets his aesthetic and values, and persistently missing out on such a girl 9 times. By the 100th time, one will inevitably encounter a soulmate who loves each other perfectly for life. It sounds great. Actually, it was really enjoyable. It is certainly false for Bai Yu to say that he has no expectations about this, but if love is also covered by the law of safety, then his life will be too successful and without any challenges. He, who did not believe in evil, began to challenge himself to find a partner, and the result was disastrous. He had to gradually transform his situation and continue to rely on the 10 in a row rule. This time, he plans to go back to his hometown to deal with the blind date. After all, it's 20 years later. It's time to think about the big things in life. Waiting for the bus at the roadside bus stop, Bai Yu looked up and the light shone through the leaves on his cheeks. He lazily stretched out. There is a bright future for everyone. The bus stopped steadily, the car doors opened, and just as he was about to get on the bus, a heavy-duty truck happened to pass through the intersection. The dazzling sunlight, reflected by several mirrors, directly blurred the driver's line of sight, making it difficult to see clearly. Under the driver's visual confusion, he instinctively thought there was a vehicle in front of him. He quickly stepped on the brake and turned the steering wheel, causing the heavy-duty truck to lose control and collide with the bus, and Bai Yu, who was obstructed by the bus, was also in a blind spot and couldn't react in time. I only heard the piercing whistle and sharp braking sound, followed by a dull impact and intense pain. Broken glass and twisted steel, the line of sight turned blood red in the sunlight. Bai Yu fell to the ground, unable to see clearly what was ahead. His ears were ringing and his mind was extremely dull. My last thought before I cut off my thinking is, this should be the 10th traffic accident. He closed his eyes with a bitter smile. In the small shop less than 10 meters away, the shopkeeper hurriedly ran to the door to save people, but when he saw the scene in front of him, his scalp was tingling. He looked at the handsome young man who had just pulled out a 5-star lying in a pool of blood, losing his vitality, and remembered the sentence he had just said with a smile. Emperor of Europe. Indeed, the lifespan is extremely short. The unfamiliar white ceiling, the sound of swaying branches. Bai Yu opened her eyes in a slightly dazzling white light. Wooden desk, book, pencil case, test paper, blackboard, chalk, window, fan, water dispenser, footsteps, conversations, rubbing of clothes, laughter, writing, flipping through books, reading. The air is filled with the smell of books and ink, and some snacks and light perfume. One hand reached out and gently swayed before his eyes. Have you woken up yet? Come back to your senses. A beautiful, youthful face suddenly leaned closer and got stuck in front of the book. Did you dream of me? The girl tilted her head and bent her waist, turned her body and carried her small hands on her back. Her bright eyes seemed to speak, and she gazed at him quietly, like willow branches brushing over the water. Bai Yu looked at the unfamiliar girl and then at the unfamiliar class, silent and stunned. The previous moment's thinking was still at the scene of the car accident. After several seconds, the dull thoughts continued. Is it true that the 10 consecutive guarantees for car accidents are like this? New book newcomer, seeking collection, seeking recommendation, seeking everything. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Enlightenment Ceremony. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Enlightenment Ceremony. Bad news. People are dead. Good news. There is resurrection armor available. Bad news. The resurrection point is incorrect. Good news. I'm getting younger. Bad news. Only a little younger, this is high school. Good news. There is a beautiful girl sitting at the table. Bai Yu's eyes were empty as he gazed at the unfamiliar scenery. He felt a bit confused, his head still hurting, and his consciousness was slightly dull. I don't know if it's a symptom caused by travel, but I always feel that my body is not very comfortable and not very adaptable. There is a feeling of discomfort in the body, as if a video recorder is being stuffed into the head, rewinding. A slightly cold little hand leaned forward and gently stroked his forehead, while the soft and boneless hand tried the temperature of his forehead. Are you okay? The girl with long hair tilted her cheeks and asked with concern, you look a bit drowsy. Do you still see what this is? She reached out a scissor hand and shook it before her eyes. Her temperament is very special, emitting a faint and fragrant aroma of tulips. She is really a beautiful little girl. In her previous life, there was no such beautiful girl among Bai Yu's peers, and naturally, she had never had such close contact with the opposite sex. Although he is a superpower, Bai Yu did not meet the requirement of 10 consecutive guarantees in terms of heterosexual relationships. Because he realized that his guarantee was passive, he speculated that even in a romantic relationship, it would take 9 times to meet a suitable girlfriend, which would be a serious torture and test for his emotional experience. Looking at the huge sunk cost, he decisively chose to be a wise man who did not fall in love. But the situation in front of him suddenly brought him back to his high school years 10 years ago, with a feeling of waking up from a big dream and feeling like a yellow sorghum. However, this feeling was only temporary. After all, she was still an adult who had entered society psychologically. Bai Yu quickly regained her senses and retreated slightly, avoiding the other person's palm pressed against her forehead. He asked, "Are you?" The girl blinked her eyes, tilted her head, and pointed her chin. "Did you really fall asleep?" Looking at the childhood sweetheart whose hair was curling up while sleeping, his eyes showed a hint of elf strangeness. Or rather, I dreamt of something amazing and wanted to play with such an interesting unfolding. She took a half step back with her hands behind her, and the sunlight illuminated her profile. Her smile made the small dimples on her cheeks particularly cute. But I don't hate performances with a little surprise either. So according to the script of Amnesia after waking up from sleep, what should I say at this moment? She paused, cleared her throat, and let out a light cough. Hello, first time meeting. My name is Su Ruoli, remember my name well, don't call me wrong, otherwise I will have some minor emotions. Bai Yu. Being teased. Undoubtedly, I was teased. Mr. Bai, who is in his late 20s, now feels his heart beating faster, just like sneaking into someone else's wild area to eat wild monsters without knowing where they are fighting. What's going on with this girl? She really understands. Just as Bai Yu's mind was slightly confused, the bell rang and a teacher wearing short sleeves stepped into the classroom. Class is over, everyone, please sit down. Su Ruoli blinked at Bai Yu and immediately returned to his seat, in the front row of Bai Yu. At this moment, he had the intention to shift his gaze away from the little girl and look into the class, paying attention to the layout of the class. Bai Yu was born in the 1990s. Even in high school, the number of students was relatively high, and he could be considered to have caught up with the last few batches of a single wooden bridge with thousands of soldiers and horses. Therefore, it is normal for a class to be filled with 60 or 70 people. Generally, a class is arranged in 4 columns, with 2 tables connected in each column, and there is also a saying of sitting together. And the total number of people in this class seems to be only over 30, so it is naturally not so crowded. On average, each table is separated separately, with only adjacent tables, front tables, and back tables without a desk mate. Moreover, the tables and chairs used in the class were made of steel and wooden boards fixed on the ground, which was different from his memory of high school. At that time, he brought his own desk, which the school was responsible for wholesale but had to collect money. The tables and chairs were all wooden structures, not fixed on the ground, and had to be moved away after graduation. Is the era different? Bai Yu began to think about what kind of era he had traveled to, looking at the architectural style and technological level here, probably after 2015. So this is not necessarily a rebirth, but a self-resurrection with a corpse. Fortunately, the language was able to communicate normally and they were speaking Chinese. He flipped through books using Chinese characters, which he could understand. Thinking of this, Bai Yu breathed a sigh of relief and let go of her lingering heart. As long as she is still in China, everything is easy to say. Now all she needs to do is confirm which region and era it is in. While he was thinking this way, he suddenly heard the homeroom teacher raise his hand and pat the desk. I haven't even forgotten what day it is today. Today is the day of spiritual awakening. Every student will experience 3 inspirations in their 3rd year of high school. Successful inspirations have unlimited benefits for your future. Seize this opportunity, adjust your mindset, and whether you succeed or fail, you must guard against arrogance and impatience. The homeroom teacher spoke with a serious expression, frowning with a stern expression, exuding a sense of authority. It's just that Bai Yu doesn't understand at all. What is the initiation ceremony? The name may sound fancy, but it may be similar to Confucius Institutes, and bowing and saluting. Bai Yu silently thought, this is not unacceptable. The homeroom teacher picked up the student book and said, next, everyone comes with me. Remember to line up according to your student ID. As the homeroom teacher walked out of the door, the other students also stood up. Bai Yu also stood up and flipped through books, unable to find his student ID number. A young man with a firm cut patted Bai Yu's shoulder and said, Geese, let's go. What's going on? As he spoke, he pushed his back and said, hurry up, haven't you been waiting for the initiation ceremony for quite some time? Why did you become so dull again at the critical moment? Bai Yu didn't dislike this kind of familiar person, but for a moment she didn't think of how to answer. But Su Ruoli seemed to notice something and silently said a number to Bai Yu, while gesturing. 11. Bai Yu let go of his worries, which saved him from asking others. He clenched his fists and said thank you. Su Ruoli raised his lips and threw a wink. Line up, Bai Yu is number 11, and the boy who just patted his shoulder is number 12, named Kong Wen. It was only when others called him that Bai Yu learned the other person's name. Although it was a time of travel, Bai Yu now has no inherited memory at all. He can only find a way to get through today's class and wait until he returns home in the evening to learn more about the specific situation, although he doesn't even know where he lives. Following the queue, we arrived at a sports stadium in the school. A group of people wearing suits are conducting routine inspections outside the gymnasium, with instruments resembling custom security facilities. The monitoring this time was only carried out in the first class of the 3rd year of high school where Bai Yu was located, and it seems that the ceremony was carried out in batches, with not a large number of people. After all the collective testing, all 37 students from a class entered the sports stadium. The students were arranged here, accompanied by school leaders and people in black. Bai Yu looked at the school leaders, who were all over 40 years old. Even the 60-year-old man known as Principal Chen looked equally vigorous, without any sense of being bloated and refined. This can't be a sports school, can it? The homeroom teacher held the student handbook and called out the names again. Taking this opportunity, Bai Yu also remembered about 1/3 of the names. Then a tall woman in a black uniform came forward, and she immediately attracted everyone's attention, not only because of her appearance, but also because she had a pair of sharp cat's ears, steamed cat-ear-shaped bread, on her head, and a hairy tail wrapped around her waist. It's like cosplay. But her cat's ears, steamed cat-ear-shaped bread, and tail are really moving, which immediately attracted a group of people's attention. Zhou Lu carried her hands behind her back, and from the shape of her ears, it looked like a cold and aloof Jianzhou cat. Hello everyone, I am Zhou Lu, the captain of the inspection team at Chanya Company. Today, I will be in charge of the initiation ceremony for Class 1 of Senior High School. Although you had already learned what it was through various channels before the initiation ceremony, I still need to repeat it specifically now. The initiation ceremony is the preparation for the extraordinary path ahead. Although the initiation ceremony cannot fully assess a person's potential, it can assess a person's qualifications, and whether or not they possess these qualifications will directly determine their future achievements. Although talent itself cannot completely determine achievement, on the extraordinary path, it is difficult for those without powerful talents to reach the end. She reached out and patted the whiteboard next to her. The initiation ceremony is divided into 2 parts. The first part is to lure out your talents, the second part is to test your willpower. No matter what kind of talent you have, if you don't have enough willpower to control it, you can still not become extraordinary. Of course, the first enlightenment ceremony may not have any results. Don't worry, most people will not have any results after their first enlightenment, so the ceremony will be held 3 times in total, and a comprehensive evaluation will be conducted during your college entrance examination. Your enlightenment results will only be known to yourself and will not be disclosed. Of course. It's also your freedom to tell others. Next, enter the apocalypse room in order according to the list. The first one, Lu Neng. Zhou Lu began reading out the list, and under the gaze of Chanya Si and school leaders, each student entered the enclosed spiritual room in sequence according to their number. When they came out, they left through another channel and did not return to the sports stadium. Everyone remained silent, with some students nervously rubbing their hands and gasping for breath. Looking at the scene before her, Bai Yu felt a bit numb. The cat-ear mother, the extraordinary, the long night priest, the initiation ceremony. Everything in front of him seemed to prove that this was not the scientifically guided world he was familiar with. Good news. Chinese still works. Bad news. It's not rebirth, it's time travel. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Heroes, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3 Heroes. Since it has been confirmed that it is a time travel, then anyway, if I can't go back, I can only choose to join. Bai Yu's heart calmed down at an extremely fast pace. There is an old Chinese saying that goes well. Come, come. Even if we understand the fact of time travel, it is not very helpful for the current situation. After a car accident, traveling through time doesn't seem so difficult to accept. As a superpower, even if you see some incredible things again, your ability to accept them is still very strong. Besides, which young man didn't have the dream of suddenly finding a fake face night belt one day? At least the generation of people is a refreshing experience. Bai Yu comforted herself with this thought. Are you very nervous? A small head protruded from the side. Su Ruoli had already left the queue and stood beside Bai Yu. The homeroom teacher not far away did not stop him. He knew that at this time, most students needed to adjust their mood, so it was better to let the students move freely. Bai Yu shook his head, unable to express his feelings, only feeling a bit complicated. Nervous, not at all. If you insist, it's like a fisherman throwing a hook and catching a torpedo, right? There is a sense of achievement that refreshes one's life, but more importantly, there is a desire to indulge and stop. Don't be nervous, it's just an initiation ceremony. May I say that too pretentious? After all, being nervous is normal. Su Ruoli saw that he didn't answer, so his voice softened and said, "Don't worry, just like the beautiful older sister above said, the initiation ceremony won't be successful all at once. Even if something happens, I will still be before you. I will lay a good foundation for you. If you want to lose face, it will be me before you. If the result is not good, I will also wait outside for you to be the first to comfort you. So. Relax a bit, okay?" The girl clenched her fists and breathed a sigh of comfort. Bai Yu's attention was once again successfully diverted by her. How could she be so skilled? Is it really just a high school student? Is this girl's initial liking too high? What is the relationship between the identity she and I occupy? Lover? It doesn't seem like it is. After all, the superpower has no experience in dating. Faced with the straightforward comfort of such a beautiful girl, the program couldn't help but get stuck. A few seconds later, he nodded wooden in the eyes of others, calmly giving a thumbs up, like a cold and ruthless-like machine. There is no further text. Shit. A boy beside him clenched his fist and cursed fiercely. The sound of sexual intercourse resonated with the hearts of many people, and many of them cast their eyes, wishing to prick him with wounds and holes. Bai Yu was puzzled and asked, Calm One patted Bai Yu's shoulder and sighed, "It's truly you. Yimu bumps." At the front desk, Zhou Lu opened the student register and read, "Next up, Su Ruoli." Su Ruoli turned around and said, "Here." Then he didn't rush to leave, but approached Bai Yu and pressed his shoulder. "Alright, stand still for now, I'll use your eyes to look in the mirror." She stared into Bai Yu's eyes and then smiled with a dimple, "How do I look?" Bai Yu continued to thumbs up and said, "I think it's pretty good." Seemingly encouraged, Su Ruoli straightened his chest and said, "That's good. I'll go in and look forward to Miss Ruoli's perfect performance." She turned around and walked into the apocalypse room, leaving behind a beautiful and fragrant figure. My classmates next to me pounded their chests and feet, howling like a baboon in a breakup. Sour, sour, sour to death, I'll forget it. Too much, too much. Damn it, why should I see this kind of thing? I don't want to see this kind of thing. Damn it, vertical sun, during the spiritual enlightenment ceremony, it actually destroyed my Tao heart. I also want a childhood sweetheart like this, I just hate Uncle Wang next door for not working hard enough. I have childhood sweethearts, but I hung him up and beat him up several times, and he never admitted to being a woman. Unlike the students who were causing a lot of commotion, the school leaders and the people from the long night department on the side showed a more serious expression, which was not seen in the previous student initiation ceremony. Zhou Lu asked the homeroom teacher, Su Ruoli. "Is this name from the Su family?" The homeroom teacher nodded with a hint of regret in her eyes and said, "Her sister used to study here too." Zhou Lu looked at the closed spiritual chamber and said thoughtfully, "I don't know if the Su family can produce another hero." The homeroom teacher remained silent for a moment and said, "I hope she's not." Zhou Lu glanced at the homeroom teacher and said no more. Qi Ling is isolated indoors and outdoors, and no one outside knows what's going on inside. About 5 minutes later, the gate of the apocalypse room was reopened. A staff member came out and whispered a few words to Zhou Lu. It was clear that the cat's ears, steamed cat-ear-shaped bread, of the officer Zhou stood up and his tail began to shake. Confirmed. Zhou Lu's tone was tinged with a hint of solemn excitement. Indeed, it is the bloodline of heroic spirits. Turning to several school leaders, he said, "I need to report back to the authorities immediately. I'll leave the final work here for you to handle, okay?" The homeroom teacher rubbed her brows and said, "You should be busy first." Zhou Lu's sudden departure in front of the students also caused many students to discuss. What's going on? It seems that Su Ruoli's talent is amazing. Previously, everyone tested it for only 1 or 2 minutes, but this time it took more than 5 minutes. I'm so curious. However, these are all personal secrets and will not be shared with anyone. Next, Bai Yu, the class teacher, shouted loudly. Come on, goosebumps. Calm One was different from the other funny people. I'm waiting for you to go to Nanjing University together. Bai Yu nodded in an auto style. He walked towards the apocalypse room. Unlike the anticipated high-tech rooms, this spacious plain white room only has a table. There are about 10 different instruments on the table, some are cold weapons, some are firearms, some are books, and even folding stool. A pig knife. Lighter. What kind of mess are they all? Do you want me to bite the lighter and get it done? The reviewer introduced, you can choose any one of the items to hold in your hand. Remember, only one can be chosen. Randomly select. Yes, choose the one that looks most pleasing to you. Bai Yu looked at the various items on the table, staring calmly and holding her breath. He noticed a small amount of light seeping out from the object. Almost everyone had it, but the degree of brightness of the light varied. He selected a pitch-black stone with a high brightness, which had been clearly polished and had a sharp edge on one side, seeming to be some ignition stone. As he touched the stone, a buzzing sound came from his ear. As he held on to the stone, the horizon around him suddenly became pitch black, and a white-haired old man suddenly appeared in front of him. The other party raised an axe in their hand and continued to chop towards the ground, each time accompanied by sparks shooting in all directions. The splashing sparks turned into flames, and the blazing flames spread like fireworks before exploding. The flames instantly engulfed Bai Yu's consciousness, and he vaguely saw the axe slashing directly towards his forehead. This scene lasted for less than 10 seconds. The burst flames formed incredibly vivid words in the sight, as if imprinted by flames. Ancient relics. Flint axe, 1-star hero. Ignite the old man, status. Intact, Bai Yu held on to the stone and heard a sound, followed by the stone in her hand starting to vibrate, and a force of rejection feedback from the stone. The white light burst out, as if a firecracker had exploded in the palm of his hand. He couldn't hold the stone and released it directly. The stone fell onto the table, making a loud noise, and the irregular shape rotated on the table. Contract failure. The remnants of the heroic spirit have returned to history. The contract of the spirit has been recorded. Currently once, what happened? Who is talking in my mind? Bai Yu hasn't figured out what's going on yet. The reviewer in front has opened the notes and started recording. White talent. Holding a holy relic for about 17 seconds, willpower judged as good. He said, it's been hard, your talent has been activated, and I believe you have also noticed. We won't ask about the specifics. Although it is difficult to become an extraordinary person with the white talent, you can also enter a humanities major related to extraordinary skills and become a researcher. Don't worry, you still have the qualifications to contribute to Xia. Congratulations, you can leave through the left door. Bai Yu pushed open the door and left the left door. As he passed through the passage, he was still looking at his palm, feeling a bit confused. Previously, I heard from others that when they awaken their talent, they will realize what usage it is. But now he hasn't figured out what talent is. Is it just like one's own guaranteed superpower? A type that requires slow exploration of usage. Stepping out of the corridor, on the open ground in front of the campus, students who had just finished their tests were gathered together to discuss something. Some had a dejected expression and looked down alone, while others were overjoyed, with the words, "I want to show off," written all over their faces. Su Ruoli was dealing with other people's questions and immediately got out of the crowd when she saw Bai Yu come out. Here, here. She shouted and quickly ran closer with a warm and careful smile. How is the situation? Is it as smooth as Miss Ruoli said? The sweet smile left one unsure how to answer, and Bai Yu's mind once again froze. He replied, my talent is at the white level of study hard and practice hard, so I probably won't be able to pass the martial arts exam. As soon as I answered casually, I didn't even know why I had to answer like that. What is the talent of studying hard and practicing hard? Bai Yu felt like a boat at this moment, flowing with the water, and a sense of detachment from consciousness became incredibly strong. Su Ruoli's sweet smile stiffened slightly as she lowered her head and said, "This way." Then he quickly lifted his head and clenched his fist, encouraging, "There's still a lot of time, maybe there will be a better choice for the next spiritual awakening." Bai Yu nodded and remained silent in response. It's not that he doesn't want to speak, but rather that his headache has intensified, and the stabbing and discomfort inside his mind have become stronger. This feeling had always existed before, as if wearing clothes that didn't fit well all the time. There was a tight feeling of wearing a sweater in reverse, but now it has become even stronger, as if the wool on the sweater is tightening and strangling the neck. Suddenly, her gaze darkened and Bai Yu's body collapsed forward. Dong! The head collided with a hard object, making an incredibly clear sound. He covered his forehead, lifted his head, looked around, and suddenly realized that he had hit the tabletop. A classmate on the side saw this scene and burst out laughing, "Are you okay? What are you doing with your head suddenly grabbing the table? Is your head iron?" Laughter never stops, and the classroom is filled with lively air. But Bai Yu couldn't laugh, and a chill rose in his heart. His spine felt cold, as if it had been touched by an invisible ghost hand. What's going on? When did I return to the classroom? In just an instant, he stumbled and found that the surrounding scenes suddenly switched, and he returned to the classroom again from outside, without any reaction time. Unconsciously, he had already returned to his seat. Why was it that? Superpower in an instant, even though it was just outside. Hysteria. The aftermath of time travel. Are you okay? Su Ruoli at the front table looked at him with concern. Bai Yu shook her head and said, "It's okay." However, the uncomfortable pain still lingers. "Oh no, I'm starting to get confused." His consciousness was a bit drowsy, and he said, "I'm even starting to hallucinate." Illusion. What illusion? Calm Wen stood up from the back table and leaned over. On the ground. Bai Yu pointed to the ground and said, "Why is it so black on the ground?" After hearing this, several classmates around lowered their heads and looked at each other with confusion on their faces. The ground has indeed turned black, extremely pitch black, as if coated with an opaque material, absorbing all the light without reflecting it, making it incredibly pitch black and smooth. Calm One. What's going on? Only Su Ruoli's pretty face turned white and her complexion changed. She shouted, "It's the shadow world. Everyone, run." The words were resounding, and after hearing the words shadow world, there was a moment of silence before a student reacted and was immediately shocked. But at this point, it's too late to escape. A sense of weightlessness struck, and the sinking sensation felt like falling into a quagmire, like falling into the water. The floor underfoot was evacuated, and everyone immediately fell into a state of weightlessness. Accompanied by the thumping sound, Bai Yu saw all 30.7 people in the class fall into shadow, screaming and panic spreading wildly. The last scene I saw was Su Ruoli extending his right hand towards him, but he couldn't grasp it in time. The sharp pain in her head intensified again, and Bai Yu's eyes turned black, like a TV that had been turned off. With a click, the battery cut off. A pitch-black room. The light illuminated the desk, and the dazed gaze regained its brightness. Bai Yu woke up again. There is a doctor in a white coat and a police officer in police uniform ahead. You're awake. White classmate. All the memories of the day the incident occurred have been traced back to the end. Do you remember the whereabouts of your classmates in Class 1 of senior high school? End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Memory Backtracking. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Memory Backtracking. Guyu South Road. The interrogation room of the Chanya department. Zhou Lu stood outside the glass window, biting her nails and unconsciously wagging her tail, indicating that she was in a bad mood. The door to the interrogation room opened and one person walked out. Team Zhou. I have seen everything, Zhou Lu interrupted, I want the result. Memory backtracking is indeed effective, but only the memories of the day are available, and all future memories are broken. Memories in the shadow world cannot be further backtracked. The police officer took out his investigation notes and said, even the memory master cannot enter deeper memory space. Forcibly intervening would cause damage to the child's soul. In fact, he has already experienced a relatively serious rejection reaction. Zhou Lu frowned and said, so. I didn't find anything. The police officer nodded helplessly and said, there is indeed no clue. The memory therapist speculated that there was a relatively serious psychological trauma, so they self-protected and closed off this related memory. Zhou Lu took out a cigarette candy from the box and put it in her mouth. She whispered, make a note and then send him back. After hesitating for a moment, the police officer asked, it took a lot of effort to transfer him here. Won't we try again? There's no need to repeat the useless work. I'm not good at psychotherapy. Don't forget that this child also has amnesia. If we use rough methods to obtain intelligence, my conscience won't be able to pass it either. He's still a child and a victim, and even emergency responders can't assume that harming innocent citizens is the premise. Zhou Liui sternly reprimanded. But after she finished speaking, she also smiled bitterly and said, but 3 days have passed, and in a few more days, we will miss the golden rescue time. There is no clue at all. How can we find the coordinates of that damn shadow world? 36 students, including the school, society, and parents, have fallen into the shadow world and gone missing. The immense pressure has also left the Long Night Division gasping for breath. The only teenager who escaped from the shadow world also fell into a coma for 3 days. Just as there were signs of waking up, he was transferred to the Long Night Department for memory tracing, in order to find some clues. However, this road was also blocked. It's completely helpless. Name: White Elm. Gender: male. Race: dot. Answer the question, race. Han ethnicity. What is the Han ethnicity? I asked you about your ethnicity. Probably a person. It looks like a person, but it will only be clear after testing whether it's true or not. Dot. Hard fists. Bai Yu's eyes are strange. What does it mean to look like a person? I'm not human, can I still be a dog? The female police officer continued to ask, how old is it? Bai Yu replied in seconds, 18. The female police officer frowned and said, no, you're not 17. Bai Yu paused and said, are you asking about age? The female police officer cast a bewildered and innocent gaze and said, so what else? Bai Yu remained expressionless and said, you all know how old I am. Why do you have to ask me again? Can you ask some valuable questions? The female police officer twitched her lips and said, now it's me asking. Do you understand what writing is? Do you have any bad habits? Bai Yu shook her head and said, no, I go to bed every day from 9 to 5, at 10 o'clock, take a shower at 8:30, do 40 minutes of soft gymnastics at 9 o'clock, and drink a cup of hot milk before going to bed. Doctors say I'm very healthy. The female police officer didn't believe it and asked, I'm asking about bad habits. Do you smoke? Draw here. Bai Yu was eager to try. I haven't tried before, but I can give it a try. Female police officer. Dot. The two of them asked and answered for several minutes, and also aligned for several minutes. The door was pushed open, and a male police officer with a Chinese character walked in with a gentle expression. Bai, let's keep the transcript here. You can leave now. Really? Bai Yu blinked and said, I want to talk more to this beautiful sister. We just talked about postpartum care for sows. Well, I really hit it off. The female police officer also stood up and said, why don't we add a friend and chat later? Okay, but I didn't bring my phone, why don't my sister buy one for me? I remember there are still a few old terminals in the office that haven't been found, all of which have been stored for over a year and have been formatted. Otherwise, they would be sent as gifts. And then I will be caught on the spot for stealing public property. Why are you so cunning, kid? The policewoman blinked and said, I'm an official of the Chania Bureau. You can't even believe me. Then you write the document. Bai Yu raised her eyebrows and said, once you write the document, I believe it. Cough cough cough. The male police officer interrupted with several coughs, Bai, I'll take you out. You're not in good health, take good care of yourself, don't get angry with this sister, it's not worth it. As Bai Yu was pushed back by the male police officer and walked out, the female police officer also followed out, seeming to feel too hot. She took off her hat and had long black hair draped over her shoulders, with two pointed animal ears on top of her head. Immediately, Bai Yu widened her eyes and stared at the top of the female police officer's head, as if she had seen something incredibly incredible. What are you looking at? Have you never seen the Xiaoya tribe? The female police officer's ears trembled above her head, looking like the ears of a Doberman. Bai Yu suddenly understood what the other person meant by race. Although he was aware of the fact that he had already traveled, witnessing this ironclad evidence with his own eyes still shocked him immensely. The female police officer felt a bit embarrassed when she was stared at. She covered her ears and asked strangely, are you still looking? Bai Yu scratched her cheek and grinned, it looks good. The clear smile of the young man made the eyes of the more than 20 female police officers slightly dazed. She unconsciously shifted her gaze and turned to the side, her cheeks blushing. The young man with red lips and white teeth was always likable, and the Xiaoya tribe had always liked the little boy of the human race. It was almost DNA engraved in XP. The male police officer coughed again and interrupted, I'll take you out. Bai Yu nodded, put on a mask, and walked out of the side door of Chanjizi before disappearing at the corner of the street. Officer Lu. The female police officer followed and handed over the notebook. This is the specific content of the transcript. Officer Guizi said, I was just outside and heard everything. What do you think? Ellie, just say it directly. Ali closed his notebook and quickly expressed his judgment and analysis. His thinking is very healthy, and his mental state is also very normal. It doesn't seem like he has a psychological disorder at all. He can talk and laugh here, which proves that he either has strong psychological qualities or doesn't think he has committed crimes or negligence at all. However, there seems to be a lack of common sense. If further investigation is needed, it may trigger the other party's PTSD reaction. Your conclusion is consistent with that of a psychoanalyst, Officer Lu rubbed his brow. But if he really lost his memory, the situation would be complicated. He sighed and said, he is the only survivor of the entire Class 1 high school seniors who has escaped from the shadow world. The other children are still missing, and the school and the long night department are under great pressure. If he can provide some effective clues, it can at least accelerate our search for survivors. Ellie continued, his shadow has not returned either. Generally speaking, after falling into the shadow world, one will lose their own shadow, and amnesia will cause their patients to lose their mobility, fall into deep sleep and long sleep, resembling a vegetative person. He is currently the only case of waking up without finding a shadow. Officer Lu said, do you think it's very suspicious? Regardless of which point is suspicious enough, but before the investigation, after actual conversation, I don't think this child has any problems. He is just the unfortunate one who was involved in it, Ali concluded privately. Why? Officer Lu Cheetah said, I was very skeptical before, thinking that he might have been bewitched by those sects who believe in ancient gods. He said my ears look good. Ariane stood up and said, those who dare to like the Xiaoya tribe are definitely not bad people. Is this judgment criterion a bit too arbitrary? Ellie shook her head and added, not casually. In fact, if he had any malice, I would have smelled the stench emanating from him a long time ago. Officer Liu didn't rush in either. He pulled out a cigarette outside and was about to light it. At this moment, Bai Yu suddenly disappeared and returned. Lost something? Officer Liu casually asked. Bai Yu scratched her head and helplessly asked for help. Sorry, I forgot where my home is. Can you please help me check my current address? Walking alone on the street, Bai Yu walked slowly past a shop where news was playing on the TV. He stopped and listened to the standard Mandarin of the news announcer. The 3rd Group Army has taken over the retro Qiantang district and is currently cleaning up ancient relics. It is expected that the first batch of residents will be relocated in March next year. 2 days ago, a 3rd-level crack appeared in the Ludao area, causing the shadow world to overflow. A yellow safety warning was issued. For your travel safety considerations, citizens are advised not to go to Ludao unless necessary. Today, the Education Bureau publicly announced that the martial arts exam will become a mandatory item in the college entrance examination, and any student must take the martial arts exam. The current population of Xia has exceeded 900 million, setting a record for the highest population since the Great Cataclysm. We appreciate the positive contributions made by the people to our country, which also indirectly proves the long-term stability of Xia. The Long Night Department will always be a solid support for all citizens. Our world is getting better and better, and our city is extremely safe. Bai Yu withdrew her gaze and looked at the item data above, feeling extremely unfamiliar. He let out a deep sigh in his soul. This world is too chaotic. After more than half an hour of reviewing the information organization and planning, he finally figured out his current situation. Time travel is indeed time travel. However, the content of my previous studies belonged to the memories section, not personally experienced by Bai Yu, but the memories left by my youth. Memorist's memory tracing allows the parties involved to relive the events of the day. Which is why Bai Yu always has an indelible sense of detachment, as if a camera has been inserted into her mind. 3 days ago, all students in Class 1 of senior high school performed their first initiation ceremony. Bai Yu has awakened her white talent of studying hard and practicing hard. After all the students returned to the class, only one class had passed before the Shadow World disaster occurred. Shadow World is one of the natural disasters in this world, similar to earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. It is unpredictable on a small scale, but can engulf several cities on a large scale. This type of disaster is called subsidence. The ancient Qiantang mentioned in the previous news is one of the subsidence areas. Now that it has been recaptured, it means a return to reality, transforming from a subsidence area into a habitable area. Small-scale shadow worlds have always existed, but they do not actually engulf reality, they only suddenly pull people in. This kind of disaster is completely random, regardless of location. Directly devouring the entire class's shadow world is an extremely rare event that has also occurred in the past century. As a result, only Bai Yu escaped from the shadow world and fell into a 3-day coma, while the other 36 students were all missing. Chanya Si attempted to use Bai Yu's memory as a breakthrough, but failed. It is also inevitable. After all, this white elm is no longer the same boy as before, he has no relevant memories, and this operation is like expecting a bull to produce milk. The consequence of being devoured by the shadow world is to lose one's own shadow, which also means gradually losing one's soul and life, usually unable to wake up. Bai Yu lowered her head and looked at her feet. The street lamp illuminated her figure, but there was no shadow under her feet. There is no shadow, which is basically impossible to exist in physics. Without a shadow, it means that light will completely pass through, and theoretically it is equivalent to the existence of ghosts and the like. There is no shadow reminding Bai Yu of his abnormality. reminding him that he is a soul from another world, occupying this body that has long been reduced to an empty shell. However, it was only his body, and he had no inheritance in terms of memory. Apart from the day of the retrospective, he knew nothing, not even his address. For all the questions from the police, there were almost no answers, and he could only use amnesia to evade them. Fortunately, this move is quite effective, and memory loss in patients with aphasia has long been identified as one of the sequelae. I understand all of this, but why? Although it is a spiritual initiation ritual in memory tracing, it can work for me. Bai Yu concentrated her mind, and a line of words ironed by flames appeared in front of her. Welcome to the Chronicles of the Spirit, end of this chapter. Chapter 5. Chronicles of Heroes. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Chronicles of Heroes. The Chronicles of Heroes, a mobile game where I help the shopkeeper draw a card before traveling on my own. This does not mean that Bai Yu has some understanding of this game, because there are too many card-drawing mobile games on the market, and there is serious homogenization. Basically, what is sold is a pile of art resources. Bai Yu is not interested in most turn-based mobile games because of this. It may look good, but it's just not fun. As an entertainment game itself, it is not fun. Originally, it carries original sin, and it is understandable to be despised by others. At present, the only thing that can be judged is that it should be a special talent that awakens itself. Although it is a memory recall, the revival of the talent in the initiation ceremony is also useful for oneself as an outsider, and can one be considered a dual talent holder. Bai Yu's line of sight had an additional icon in front of him, so he didn't need to reach out and concentrate, and he appeared to run the animation smoothly. Welcome to the Chronicles of the Spirit, system initialization, checking game resources for you, updating. Unable to connect to server, changing to local area network status, system resource allocation failed. Image data missing, key data missing. Startup failed. After a series of red failed characters, the game seems to have crashed. Accompanied by a stuttering sound effect, a rather rudimentary line of text appears. Due to inability to connect to the network for updates and a large amount of missing data within the game, the Chronicles of the Spirit is undergoing data reproduction. Do you agree to use players for data collection? Note. This option may infringe on your personal privacy, Bai Yu. Surprisingly, it was even thoughtfully labeled, which was a bit touching. However, privacy rights. Haven't they been obscured by various apps for a long time? I clicked on the Agree option. Using player data for game patching, the Yingling module has been launched, Contract module has been launched, Recharge module has been launched. This time, I can finally enter the main interface of the game. Bai Yu got on the bus, chose a seat in the back by the window, and then focused on the icon in the Chronicle. First, I clicked on the Recharge module, which includes the standard unequal sequence of 30, 98, 198, 328, 648. And of course, the iconic first recharge double reward. Try clicking on 648, but unfortunately there was no feedback as the blue.green modifier did not follow through. Exit the recharge module and enter the contract module. This is the standard card pool for game drawing, but what sets it apart from a regular card pool is the Yingling database has been lost. The current hero data in the contract prayer pool is 0, amazing. Bai Yu let out a sigh, even the card pool was banned. Not only can it not be recharged with money, but it can also be used to draw cards. As a cultivation game, it directly blocks the way, effectively preventing players from becoming addicted to the game and excessive consumption. Unconsciously, the soles of the feet exerted force, and the toes began to buckle onto the soles of the shoes. He continued to switch modules expressionlessly and entered the Spirit module. Unlike what was expected to be completely blank, a character has already been logged in. Is it a hero gifted by a novice? Bai Yu was excited 1 second ago, but when she clicked confirm the next second, her mood immediately returned to a calm state. Fate Editor, Human Race, Male, Age. 1727, rank. Not advanced, realm. Real realm, location. Physical station, personal occupation. Student, professional characteristics. Comprehensive academic improvement and enhancement, inherent talent. Diligent learning and hard training, white, Chronicles of Heroes, unique, skill. None, mysterious. None, equipment. None, binding level plus infinity, full of confidence, mood. Ignored, status. Severe illness, patient with loss of shadow, evaluation. Life is like a dying person with thin paper, your life is like a candle in the wind. This fate editor clearly refers to Bai Yu himself. The characters on their character panel are clearly written, even including the phenomenon of life loss caused by shadow loss. To be more detailed, there is even a numerical panel. However, there is a sentence below the numerical panel called "for reference only," which means it may be true or false, and complete digitization is not reliable. Bai Yu took a closer look at herself in the picture and didn't expect her character to also have a stand-up painting, which is also a 2D animation style. However, no matter how she looked at it, it was a bit different from herself. The fate editor in this picture clearly looked more handsome. Bai Yu is already very confident in her appearance, but who is this handsome guy wearing a black suit in the picture? From the facial lines of the portrait, perhaps there hasn't been much change in the face, but the difference in appearance and temperament is almost that of a different person. Why is there such a wicked and arrogant female lead with a male lead? Bai Yu glanced at his ordinary sports outfit and compared it with the entire black suit in the portrait and the civilization staff with a lion's head embedded in his left hand. I feel the difference between the anime and the third dimension. He sighed, and regardless of why the fate editor could be so handsome, this character was probably of no use to him. He has never played this game before, but he has heard some basic information about it from his good friend Lao Yang. Chronicles of the Spirit is a character development game. Most mobile games on the market focus on character development. But without a character, it cannot be cultivated. The role of the Destiny editor should be positioned like the protagonist, similar to the lords, commanders, captains, and so on in various mobile games. Because the editor is not a hero, it cannot be cultivated. Bai Yu cannot cultivate himself, he can only support himself. So far, it is unclear how to obtain the spirit, and naturally most of the system functions are completely non-existent. Mobile games are like this. Once a character is lost, most of the development system will be invalidated, with one link not being connected and the loop chain directly disconnected. There are two ways to obtain the spirit. One is to directly obtain gifts through the game storyline, and the other is to obtain them through the draw cards in the prayer pool. Both roads here are blocked. Bai Yu switched back to the prayer pool module and looked at the empty prayer pool with sorrow. Total amount of data in the prayer pool. 0, record of the spirit contract. 1, Bai Yu's gaze paused and he said, Is the contract recorded as 1? I haven't drawn a card before, have I? Can we say that the initiation ceremony in memory tracing can also be considered an effective record? Even if the prayer pool cannot draw cards, it is still possible to evoke the spirit projection by directly touching relics in reality. At this moment, the bus is broadcasting. Taiping Road Station has arrived. Passengers who need to get off should get off through the back door. We're home now. It can't be called home, it's more like a residence. A place without family can't be considered a home, it's just a house. Bai Yu took out the key and opened the door. The standard 3-bedroom living room could accommodate a family of 4. He noticed that the entire room was clean and neatly arranged, completely unlike the residence of a male high school student. When he caught a glimpse of the flower pot on the balcony, he also realized. It was obvious that he was not the only one staying here. The entire room is filled with a large number of items that cater to the aesthetic preferences of young girls, and their owners are likely to be. Although she had a memory recall, Bai Yu was still quite unfamiliar with her senses, and she didn't expect this childhood sweetheart to be close enough to live under the same roof. Although they are childhood sweethearts, does living together directly lack a sense of distance? What do both parents think? Are you crazy about hitting CP? After a simple wash of her face, Bai Yu began to examine her current living environment. It was easy to find her own room with a name pasted on the door, while the other two rooms, one specially painted pink with a lock on the door, and the other was transformed into a warehouse. Bai Yu searched her room and unfortunately couldn't find any inappropriate diary. He noticed an unopened package placed in the room and casually opened it. What is the address for the package to be sent to? Wudu. The sender's name is Bai Pajuan. There is a celebrity photo and a photo inside the package. The photo shows a lively old man with white hair and two blonde girls together. In addition, there is an old-fashioned lighter with a green shell inside, which looks like an antique. Judging from the contents of the envelope, this old man from the White Army should be the grandfather of a young man. He has been traveling around the world for a long time and occasionally sends back some cultural relics or local specialties by mail. Isn't it black teen gazing up at the stars that bring English local specialties? Bai Yu picked up the box and planned to transfer it to the warehouse area, but just as his palm touched the lighter, an electric light flowed through his fingertips. In an instant, the scene around began to change. A middle-aged man was wearing white gloves and holding a lighter. He held the lighter with his fingers, held it with his thumb, and turned the steel gear. The gear rubbed against the flint, sparking. Mars is shooting everywhere, and a flame is immediately generated, causing a series of explosions with a snap of the middle-aged man's finger. The sound of roaring explosions is incessant in our ears. Antiquities. Lighters, 1-star spirit. Flame warlock, status. Shadow, contract failure. The remnants of the heroic spirit have returned to history. The contract of the spirit has been recorded, currently twice. Bai Yu regained his senses and looked at the lighter that had fallen from his hand. Surprisingly, this is also a relic. He then looked at the various sizes of packages stacked in the warehouse, which was over half a person high. Good guy. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Ren Xia. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Ren Xia. After an hour of unpacking time. Although I really want to roast about why there are so many ancient relics in my home, what is the origin of this old man? However, let's not worry about these issues for now, let's be grateful first. Bai Yu selected 7 relics from over 30 packages. Among these 7 relics, 3 are hosted by the projection of the heroic spirit, while the other 4 are ceremonial attire. He picked up one of the relics, which was a very peculiar butterfly-shaped fan. The scene suddenly switched, and the memories preserved in the relics surged in like a tide, presenting the illusory projection before Bai Yu's eyes. What he saw was a theater, where a female performer was indulging in dancing. She was dancing with swaying posture, looking forward to every move, but what was completely different was that the entire theater was burning flames, igniting in the flames. She was dancing in the flames, stepping on the tongue of fire with every step she took. Antique. Butterfly fan, 1-star gift. Burning oneself in flames, durability. 51%, gift equipment data has been recorded in the prayer pool. Bai Yu opened the butterfly fan and did not take it off this time, because it was not a heroic spirit, but a gift. Not all ancient relics are ceremonial attire, and not all ancient relics can harbor the will of heroes. The ceremonial attire itself harbors mysterious powers and can be used directly as a weapon or prop, but each use will cause a decrease in its durability. And if one wants to use ceremonial attire, they must also be extraordinary. Ordinary people have no qualifications to use ceremonial attire. Bai Yu put down the butterfly fan and confirmed the record in the prayer pool. The contract of the spirit has been recorded, currently 9 times, here it is, for the last time. The success probability of the spirit contract is very low, and the game Spirit Chronicles has no guarantee. Whether you can draw or not depends entirely on your face. However, Bai Yu is very calm. He has the superpower of the bottom line rule, and the 10th draw will definitely stabilize the hero. In order to confirm whether his superpowers followed the time travel, he conducted an experiment and the answer was absolutely no problem. He found 100 yuan in the corner of the cabinet. The next step is to make a choice among the 3 relics that host the projection of the spirit. Actually, there is nothing to choose from. The 3 heroic projections are all 1 star, and 2 of them have a residual state. The spirit in the residual state means that its boarding will is shattered, and even if successfully summoned, the final result may be a flawed and incomplete projection of the spirit. 1-star spirit is already the lowest rare spirit, and if it is still broken, its combat power hardly needs to be considered. Bai Yu looked at an orange-yellow metal shell. The consciousness residing in this shell is clearer. He reached out to grab the metal shell and closed his eyes. Confirming relics, at the moment of touch, Bai Yu's thoughts were drawn into the remaining memory inside this metal shell. That was an elderly man with gray hair, standing in front of a flower shop, watering the flowers in an ordinary way. He looked ordinary and had reached the age when he was about to catch his breath after walking a few steps quickly. However, it was this old man sitting in the sunlight with his eyes half closed, giving an old lion the feeling of sunbathing. His back was hunched, but his eyes were sharp, without any signs of aging or chaos. As if sensing something, he turned around and smiled, meeting the gaze of Bai Yu. Bai Yu regained her senses. Legacy. Metal bullet case, 1-star hero. Ren Xia, status. Full shadow, the contract of the spirit has been drafted is a formal contract to be entered into. A line of fiery red text immediately appeared in front of his line of sight, and the burning flames of the text emitted light, shocking his eyes. The 10th hero extraction has met the conditions. Confirmation of contract. The spirit contract has come into effect. Should we start weaving the final curtain of fate for Ren Xia? If one refuses to weave the final curtain of their destiny, they will not be able to obtain the complete panel of this spirit weaving, the end of fate. He thought for a moment and recalled what old Yang had said. It seemed like there was a need for a personal storyline after extracting heroes in this game. It is equivalent to introducing the background and gameplay of the hero as a beginner to guide the plot. Then let's start straight. Bai Yu clicked to confirm weaving. Suddenly, a violent vibration of notes came from my ear. Thumping, 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 thumping. It is the opening overture of the Symphony of Fate. The words of flames burn into ashes. Starting the weaving of fate on cloudy and rainy days, the rain is scattered and scattered. The elderly man in flower armor sat at the doorstep, listening to the rain falling on the old roof, and the flowing water pattering down in the yard. He gazed gently at the girl ahead, who was wolfing down the rice. Eat slowly, don't worry. The old man poured a glass of water, blew a few sips, and handed it over. Thank you, thank you. She swallowed the rice, sniffed hard, hesitated for a moment, took the water glass, and drank it all in one gulp. I'll leave after I finish, and I won't cause you any more trouble. The girl lowered her head and said, the grace of a meal, if there is a chance in the future. She was about to say something in return, but this sentence came to a halt on her lips. She didn't even know how long she could live. Not to mention repaying kindness, even having enough to eat and wear warm clothes was a problem. The old man smiled kindly and said, you can rest here tonight. There are very few people here and it's very quiet. No one can find you. The girl opened her mouth and lowered her head to eat rice again. Tears as big as beans fell into her bowl, eating the bitter rice one by one. Neither of them spoke, the girl didn't speak, and the old man didn't ask any questions. He just continued to play with the potted plants he had raised. Then suddenly, there was an unusually rude knocking sound outside the door, a thumping thud. The girl's shoulders trembled with fear, her face turned pale, and her rice bowl was knocked over. The old man gestured for nothing and stood up. Don't be afraid, I'll go deal with these people. He hunched his back and walked to the door. Opening the door, the girl slightly poked her head out and saw the group of extremists wearing colorful shirts and black suits outside the door. I don't know what the old man said to the other person, but this group of extreme Dao didn't make much noise and quickly left. It's okay, the old man returned to the room and comforted the girl, they won't come again in the short term. How did you? They are just seeking money, I gave them my savings, the old man said calmly. What? The girl was shocked and felt extremely guilty. How could it be like this? Don't worry, it's just some money, the old man smiled magnanimously. I don't have much to spend money on, and there's also a retirement pension provided by the Fusang official. The girl lowered her head and bit her trembling lower lip. She couldn't understand why the old man was so selfless in helping herself. But she couldn't refuse either, she could only accept this help. She really has no choice, she has been chased by Jidao to the point where she has no way out, and these debts are not owed by herself at all. Her father owed a high gambling debt, and his entire family was dragged away to pay off the money, which was still a drop in the bucket. He could have died irresponsibly, and the debt directly drove the remaining family to a dead end by the extremists. She spends 24 hours a day working to earn money, with almost no time for reading and studying. Even if she gets into school, she can't afford to pay tuition. The huge debt, busy work, and pressure of studying all made her almost breathless. The debt collectors come every day, making it almost impossible for her to find a job normally. She can only constantly change places to find odd jobs, and she cannot find a place to live for a long time. The landlord will rush to drive her away when she sees Jidao. She was penniless, unable to find a job, and her family was ruined. She was almost forced into a desperate situation. No one helped her, no one to confide in, and all her past friends coincidentally chose to stay away. Even crying and shouting have no effect, because big cities don't believe in tears. Walking alone on the street on a rainy day, she once thought of jumping into the sea and committing suicide. If it weren't for the elderly family who used to work in a flower shop taking her in, she might have died. By now, a meal and a sleeping bed have made her grateful. Not to mention that the old man even used all his savings to stop the extremist outside the door, it was simply beyond redemption. But she once again felt fear, afraid that her existence would bring misfortune to this kind old man. The girl quickly fell asleep. Even though she was asleep, she still held her arms, showing that even in her dream, she was still closely followed by those people in black, like a nightmare that could not be dispelled. The old man helped cover the blanket and dug out a nail-sized object from her clothes. A messaging device. The old man shook his head in silence. The girl thought she could escape, but it was still in the other person's hands. He pounded his waist, slowly stood up, walked to the edge of the potted plant, lifted his beloved potted plant, and pulled out an automatic pistol from the grid below. The handle of the pistol was engraved with the design of a falcon. Tongsheng Ying Gyro. This is the name of the old man, a name that gathers dragons and eagles, quite domineering. Later on, he didn't like the name very much, so he changed it. He took the eagle and changed his name to Jiro. Mr. Jilong stood up and walked towards the door. He thought to himself that the passbook he had just received should also be noticed, as there was not much money inside. He lied. How could a widowed and lonely elderly person have so much savings? He doesn't even have a retirement pension, and his entire fortune is just an old flower shop. That's just to make the girl feel at ease. He added some calming medicine to the water, which could help her sleep well and wake up without thinking about having sex. And the more she sleeps, the better, it can cover up some external noise. He opened the door, held an umbrella, and walked onto the main road outside. Without any accidents, the sound of vehicles was soon heard, and the headlights flickered through the night. Over a dozen extremists angrily pushed open the car door and rushed over. Old thing, I think you're tired of living. The bald leader roared with a detestable expression, are you looking for death? Dare to play with us? I have a question. The old man was holding an umbrella and spoke with a trembling tone unique to his old age, why force that child to death? I have already paid off the principal and interest on the debt, haven't I? The fees you gave in the past are not even enough to pay interest. All right, old man. Anyway, you're tired of living, and to be honest with you, it doesn't matter. The cadre of Jidao sneered, if you owe us the money from our Baichuan group, it means you won't be able to pay it back for a lifetime. The numbers in the IOU and the terms in the contract can be changed any way you want. So, were you intentional? Of course it was intentional, otherwise could it still be careless? Jidao cadre laughed heartily, and the younger brother behind him also smiled maliciously. If you owe us a debt, you are destined to be a cow and a horse for our whole life. When you die, you must extract the value. Even if you jump off a building and commit suicide, you must transport the body and sell the organs that can be sold. This is called a way to make money. Do you understand, old thing? Unfortunately, you are too old and have no value, otherwise you will have to scatter your ashes in the rice fields. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out. Bang! The sound is like thunder, sweeping through the rainy and turbulent night. Red and white splashed out, landing on the faces and clothes of people a few steps behind. The cadre of Jidao fell to the ground with a hollow on his forehead. In the pouring rain, the old man's back, which had been hunched for over a decade, slowly straightened. At this moment, everyone noticed that the old man who had always been bent over was actually a tall and slender figure close to 2 meters tall, with an astonishing and sturdy figure when he was young. I completely understand. The old man raised his smoky gun and aimed it at the group of extreme disciples, saying, you all deserve to die. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Evil Ghosts. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. Evil Ghosts. I'm getting old. Kirishiro murmured softly. Fatigue fills every corner of the body. He sighed with self-deprecation. More than a dozen bodies of Jidao collapsed in various positions on the street ahead, with only one living body hidden behind the trash can trembling and teeth colliding and trembling. Everyone was shot to death. Tongsheng is not an ordinary elderly person, he is also an extraordinary person with a heroic bloodline. His heroic bloodline awakens, and the reason for awakening still flows through his bloodline. His bullets can always hit 100 shots, so the time it takes to kill these extreme paths is only a few seconds. Even with only a dozen or so seconds left, the consumption of operating the spirit theory almost drained all of his physical energy, making him feel exhausted. The last one. He raised his hand and pulled the trigger. The bullet headed towards the head of the last extremist molecule as if it were automatically searching for a target. When the orange-yellow bullet was shot down, and after several rounds of ejection, it disappeared into the rain curtain. Jiro Tongsheng looked at the visitor, who was also a Jidao, and the tie on his neck had the same pattern. And he could feel that the other party was also an extraordinary person, without which, he could not have shot down his own bullet. The 100 Rivers group is like a head. The visitor reported his name, which was a middle-aged man holding an iron rod that was over a meter long in his hand. His body was full of powerful martial arts, and the veins under his muscles protruded like an earth dragon. I didn't expect there to be such an old beast hidden in this old and underdeveloped Edo. The old man touched the firearm and said in a low voice, you are an extraordinary person, but you are willing to hang out with these extreme beings. Everyone has their own aspirations, said Ruatu, a casual member of the Baichuan team. It's my job to find where I like. It's because you killed so many of my members. If I don't kill you, I won't be able to explain it when I go back. If I kill you, there won't be any more trouble in the future, will there? Said Kirishiro calmly. If you kill me, the Baichuan group should be expelled, he said with a grim smile. But if you die, that little girl will end up in a very miserable situation. With a roar, thunder illuminated the long street and also illuminated two figures. The gun rang out with two loud bangs. Tongxing Jiro's body fell to the ground, splashing turbid water droplets. Blood overflowed from his wound and gradually dyed the water red. Baichuan shook the blood-stained iron rod with his head and said calmly, "It's a pity. You should be stronger as a young person." He broke into the flower shop, picked up the sleeping girl, and his back disappeared into the night. The old man was unable to move, his fingers stiffened, and his gradually dilated pupils looked at the sky. "I'm getting old. Because I am too old and my body is too slow and dull, even if I can see the flaws, my physical fitness can no longer keep up with the speed of reaction. The slow second determines life or death." He is not afraid of death. He had already stained his hands with countless blood, and as a former executioner of the shogunate, he did not expect himself to end up in any good fate. It was already beyond the control of heaven to live until 80 or 90. Otherwise, how could he tolerate someone as vicious as him to live until now? He was just regretful that he couldn't bring Ren Xia's path to the end. Ren Xia is a thug and also a villain who wields a sharp blade to take people's lives. He uses evil to control evil and dies as soon as he dies. But that girl is innocent. Unable to save her, this is the regret that Jiro Tongxing has been unwilling to close his eyes and pass away. If he were younger, he could have saved her. An old hero crouching on a beam. A martyr in his old age, he didn't lose to his opponent, he just lost to time. No matter how intense the flames in his heart were, he couldn't change his aging body. This unwillingness and regret eventually, he still couldn't close his eyes. Standing under the old man, a pitch-black shadow solidified like a living creature, transforming into a young man wearing a suit and holding a civilized cane. He gazed at the dead old man. Immediately, the young man slowly crouched down and pressed his right hand on the old man's chest, gradually casting a shadow into the body of the deceased. The body stood up again, and the wound began to heal, emitting hot steam. A white mist enveloped the area. With one hand, the white mist parted, and behind the smoke curtain, it was no longer Tongxing, who was drooping old, but a younger one. In just an instant, he returned to his 30s and peak physical fitness. And the soul that controls this shell is no longer Tongxing, but has become an outsider. Bai Yu opened his eyes, his mind was clear and his consciousness was also clear. His body seemed to be his own, and every inch of his muscles was filled with explosive strength. But he also knew very well that he was using a body called Kirishige Jiro, and he had already died from bleeding from a broken organ a minute ago. He stood completely in the first perspective and felt everything before the death of this aging Ren Xia, so much so that he now accepted his body and identity without much strangeness or resistance. He usually refuses to enter the body. But now I have witnessed it twice in a row, and I have to get used to it if I'm not used to it. Unlike the aging body that used to gasp for breath after walking a few steps, the current body represents the peak period of Jiro Kirishige. The old man is undoubtedly dead. With his endless regrets and unwillingness. What Bai Yu needs to do now is to continue writing the unfinished story and turn this imperfect ending into what everyone expects. Flaming words also appeared in his sight. Ren Xia, end curtain, destroy the Baichuan formation. Fate has begun to weave, the countdown has begun, 02.59.59, clear task objectives, the time limit is 3 hours. Bai Yu thought she would feel anxious due to this sudden situation, but in fact, she didn't. Her consciousness was very calm, as if she had withdrawn excess emotions. He is very clear about what he came here for, and even if he wants to pull the trigger, he will not hesitate. And the flame in my heart still exists, as if I inherited an inexplicable anger from Tongxing. He felt that at this moment, he was more like an evil spirit, a undead who came to life for revenge. It is precisely because it was inherited along with the residual longing of the deceased elderly that I felt so angry. Bai Yu picked up the firearm on the ground and pulled up the black umbrella, saying, "Death, here we go." At this time, the old Edo and New Tokyo were in a transitional period, with a large number of old houses being demolished and new high-rise buildings being constructed. The whole era is rolling forward, and land has become the most valuable thing. Every inch of land is precious. Many mafia organizations have also set their sights on the land at this time and chose to start a real estate business, making progress day by day. In order to lower the price and acquire land from ordinary people, they often resort to any means, from threats, harassment to kidnapping, in order to force the parties to sign and cut off their hands and feet. Everything is for profit. A van was driving towards the intersection, and Bai Chuanzuru's tall tail lit a cigarette, took a deep breath, and exhaled white mist. No one could have imagined that there would be extremely vicious extremist elements in this van, and there was also a kidnapped victim behind it. The girl in the back seat has already woken up. Her name is Xiexin. At this time, her hands and feet are tied up, and a cloth is stuffed into her mouth. The smell of oil on the cloth makes her want to vomit. After waking up, she had already heard the conversation of the surviving Jidao and knew what had just happened. She pretended to be unconscious, but tears were already flowing uncontrollably, staining the dirty car mat. How powerless she is, how unwilling she is. She also knew what kind of fate she would face in the future, but she couldn't even bite her tongue and commit suicide. Big brother, I don't understand. Is it worth losing so many people just for such a little girl? Selling her for the sake of her is certainly not worth it, and she won't be able to get back so many lives. This time, it's like a shipwreck in the sewer. Takao took a sip of his cigarette and spoke in a somewhat plain tone. However, there are also many people to recruit. The shogunate's implementation of the abandoned saber order has caused a large number of old warriors to lose their jobs, and this group of people have become ronins. They have no serious way of making a living. Without the shogunate's support, they can only take to the streets and hang out with us. These types of people cannot disappear and disappear within 50 years. If one dies, recruit another. I'm still in this group, so I'm not afraid no one will come. The young man driving whispered, "What will this little girl do next?" "Take it to the old place. Go directly." Gao Wei said calmly, "Because so many people have died for this girl, she can't live anymore. Besides, she doesn't have much value to live." In fact, there was an old man who fell ill and discussed with the team leader to exchange 10% of the shares for organs. This girl is just right. She was originally planning to force her to die and take her organs. Anyway, her father dared to sign anything to cancel those gambling debts, and the body donation certificate had already been signed. All the procedures were completed, waiting for her to jump into the sea and commit suicide. So let's go straight, isn't it a bit of a bad rule? Fool, so many people have died. Why bother with so much? The old man no longer has patience. He brought the doctors from the black market and even increased the price. Now they are waiting at the villa. Otherwise, let me personally take action. Gao Wei sneered. At this moment, suddenly, a strong light illuminated the interior of the car. The driver instinctively turned his head and saw a pitch-black sedan crash directly into the side of the van, flipping it over on the spot. The van turned around and then came back straight, with its high tail and hands protecting its head. It swept open the glass fragments and grabbed the driver's arm, saying, "Hey." When this was pulled over, the driver's head and face were covered in blood. Takao looked towards the source of the blood and only then noticed that the driver's side of the head had been punctured at some point. He had already had his head blown out before being hit by a vehicle. Takao kicked open the car door with a kick and lit up his swing stick, saying, "What kind of person? Get out of here." A pitch-black sedan lay in the middle of the road, and the doors slowly opened. A young man in a black suit walked out calmly, holding an old pitch-black pistol in his right hand. He walked to the front of the car, and the headlights illuminated his back from behind, pulling the shadow long in pouring rain, as if there was another figure wearing a gray kimono overlapping on his body. No bright light can illuminate his facial features. Like a demon crawling out of the depths of hell. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Death God. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8. Death God. Takao recognized the license plate of this car, which was one of the vehicles they had just driven over. It was originally planned to be handed over to logistics for recycling. So who exactly is this young man? It's natural that he can't recognize it. It's impossible to connect this murderous young man with the sagging old man just now. No matter who the other party is, they all come with the intention of killing. Perhaps it was an enemy, perhaps it was sent by a hostile organization. Takao picked up the iron rod, turned the middle end of the rod, and separated it into two swinging rods on the left and right. No matter who you are. He grabbed his weapon and a wave of aura slowly swirled around him. Since you've taken action, be prepared to throw your life here. Extraordinary. After entering this field, people are no longer ordinary people. The physical strength and reflex nerves are several times higher than those of ordinary people, and these increases are only one manifestation of the second growth of extraordinary individuals. Both the human body and soul cannot bear extraordinary factors, which is why secondary growth is needed. With ordinary human vision and reflex speed, it is not difficult to catch up with bullets, but for superhumans, dodging bullets is not difficult. If you can see clearly, you can dodge them. Undoubtedly, some superhumans are skilled at long-range attacks and may attach some special reinforcement to their bullets or bows, making them faster, able to achieve trajectory deviation, or have stronger penetration, but none of these are actually big issues. Because even a single bullet can't kill a person. On the contrary, Takao silently gathers his internal energy on the double crutches, and his attacks can easily crush granite. Advanced and extraordinary use of cold weapons without exception is because the attack power of cold weapons is directly proportional to their own strength, while the attack power of small hot weapons, even if increased, has an upper limit. Takao's judgment is that a simple bullet cannot kill him, as long as it does not hit the head or vital points. On the other hand, as long as one of his attacks hits the opponent, he will undoubtedly die. Just like dealing with that old thing before. He decisively chose the same strategy. Bring the distance closer. He stomped heavily on the ground with both feet, swaying continuously left and right in a Z-shaped gait, while raising his left hand on his head. The gaze locked on the other person. Shoot! Shoot! He shouted inwardly, no matter how hard you shoot, I will definitely be able to dodge. Even if I can't dodge, fight to take a bullet. As long as you let me get close, you will definitely die. I will smash your head. The young man in black, possessed by the evil spirit, did indeed lift his gun, but it was not aimed at him, but fired in a completely crooked direction. The bullet pierced through the air as if without any additional extraordinary power. Takao was stunned for a moment, and then his heart burst into laughter. It seems that I overthought it myself. This person is not a superhero at all, just an ordinary gunman. Judging from his ridiculous reaction, even a 3-year-old child is better than him. Bang. Takao fell to the ground, his head vigorously kissing the ground, his limbs weakly spread out, and blood flowed out along the water pool. He widened his eyes, perhaps due to the tenacious vitality of the extraordinary, he did not die immediately. But he didn't understand how he got shot. And why would the location of the bullet be in the back of the head? That shot was clearly crooked and he would never understand why he was shot. The young man didn't intend to explain to him and walked straight in front of him, pulling the bolt of his gun. Bang! 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 Triple shot. The bloodstain spread and the person was already dead. Bai Yu put the gun back to his side waist. The shot he just fired was actually a jump bullet. With the blessing of Jiro Kirishige's bullet time, coupled with his over 60 years of experience in firearms use. This can already be called pistol mastery, with precision chasing city hunters. Before pulling the trigger, he knew clearly that it would be a bounce, and he could completely calculate its trajectory, as if a red line had already marked it. Even if the calculation is completely wrong, it doesn't matter, there is another layer of insurance. This is the 10th bullet fired and also Bai Yu's lucky bullet. A shot from both sides brought down this extraordinary person with a level of up to 19. It was also because he was too careless, because he had won over the same type of Tongxing before, completely ignoring his fragile back of the head. After Bai Yu finished repairing his gun, he walked into the van. He had just focused on the collision and forced to stop, but forgot about the safety of Xiexan inside. In fact, due to the lack of seat belts and airbags, she was also hit quite lightly. Fortunately, there were many corpses stuffed into the back seat as meat mats. Bai Yu opened the van and saw the drowsy Sun Nishino. She felt the tug and instinctively cried out, "No, please. Help, help." Bai Yu held her mouth and said, "Calm down, I'm not with them." After hearing the sound, Xiexan became clearer. She didn't know what was going on. When she looked at Bai Yu, she directly recognized him as an old man and said, "Grandpa Tongxing." After releasing her hands, she hugged her and choked up in tears, saying, I thought you had." Her corners were red and swollen, her eyes were congested, but her mind was extremely excited, clearly a post-traumatic stress state. Bai Yu reached out and placed his hand on her shoulder, gently tapping, "All right, it's okay now. You're safe now. What about those people? They're all dead." "Dead. I killed it." When Bai Yu said these words, there was no fluctuation in his heart, as if he had only crushed a few ants to death. He thought to himself that a considerable part of this possession state was dominated by the experience and memory of Mr. Tongxing. If it were for an ordinary young man like him, just shooting would make his hands tremble. We need to leave here immediately, run quickly, otherwise they will retaliate." Xiexan panicked, but what panicked was not that the other party had killed someone. She was too aware that the other party had killed someone to protect herself. The girl immediately grabbed the young man's right hand, and in her eyes, the other party was still the hunched elderly man. "We need to hurry." "You should leave," Bai Yu said calmly. "There seems to be a lot of cash in the other car. It's the protection fee that was just collected. Take this money and leave here." Zino Sun nodded obediently and said, "Grandpa Tongxing, let's go together. Only you have to leave." Xiexan was stunned, her face full of fear and helplessness, and she said, "Are you driving me away?" "I have something else to do." Bai Yu turned around and withdrew her palm from her hand. "I probably won't be able to come back once I go." Xiexan's shoulders trembled as she understood what the other person was going to do. "No, can't we?" "No, it's not possible." Bai Yu followed the old man's tone and touched her hair. "You're alone, okay, understand." "But I'm alone, where else can I go?" said Hino Sun with tears streaming down her face. "Nanling," Bai Yu instinctively blurted out. "What?" "Nanling City in the summer is a great place." Bai Yu's hands began to automatically tidy up her messy hair. "If this place is too cruel to you, then go to another place, a foreign land. There will always be a place for you in the vast world." He put down his hand and gently pushed her shoulder, saying, "Go ahead, go further, the farther the better, escape to a place that allows you to achieve happiness. That's it. My old man's life is coming to an end, and your life has just begun." After speaking, Bai Yu turned around and walked towards the vehicle. In the rear, Hino Sun stared at the figure behind her, which pulled her out of the abyss while she herself fell into the abyss. The car engine roared, accompanied by a whistling sound, and the red headlights disappeared at the end of the rain curtain. Nishino Sun looked at the money bag that had been thrown on the ground and soaked by the rain, and sat down on the ground. It was a long time before she regained the strength to stand up. "Nanling. Whispering the name in her mouth, she picked up her purse and slowly walked further away. She wants to leave here and go to a more distant place, where she can find peace and happiness. Even if you're alone. The cloud car roared. Bai Yu is racing. It turns out that the old man also has research on vehicles, and his driving skills are quite good. One after another, turning and drifting make adrenaline constantly secrete. I look even more at you, old man. Bai Yu murmured to herself, glancing sideways as if she could see a handsome middle-aged man sitting next to her with his lips curled up in favor. Although it is a projection of a heroic spirit, which is no longer visible today, Bai Yu can feel how spirited Ren Xia this old man would be when he was young. This kind of Ren Xia spirit also rapidly ferments and continuously precipitates under his chest. Although this is not something that belongs to the white elm itself, the sensation left behind is real. Just like touching the water surface with fingers, the flowing water will not change, while the fingertips will become moist and the touch will remain. Bai Yu is very clear about where the headquarters of Baichuan Group is located. There is a prompt. 3 hours later, it took him almost half the time to arrive on the basis of the extremely fast racing. Because this place where the 100 Rivers Group is hidden is not located in the city center, but in a villa in the mountains of a nearby small town, where there seems to be a market for organ sales and a hidden casino. Before this sedan completely broke down, he raced all the way to the vicinity of the villa. Looking at the front door of the villa, Bai Yu held on to the steering wheel. Raise the cigarette pack with your right hand, pat your left hand, throw the cigarette, open your mouth and bite the cigarette filter. He fired a shot into the sky and lit his cigarette with the muzzle. He doesn't have the habit of smoking, but at this moment he suddenly feels like taking a puff, and since he's not using his own body, taking 2 puffs is not a big deal. The sedan, which was nearing collapse, also emitted a low roar like a dying horse. If it had a soul, I wonder if it would feel high at this moment. Get ready, miscellaneous people. Ren Xia let out a mouthful of white mist and said, "Your death god grandpa is here." End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Sunrise. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Sunrise. A gang leader just finished dinner with his stomach up. He knows there is an important business to talk about today, so he is assigned to guard it. If his head is not around, he is the person responsible for security here. However, he didn't even bring his gun because it was unnecessary. If the leader goes out to grab goods and comes back soon, he is completely not worried that the leader will miss out. He is an extraordinary person. Will the Jidao dens hidden in the deep mountains be beaten in like this? How could it be which one without long eyes dares to break in? For many people, the steel gates here are a gateway to death, but for some, they are also a gateway to wealth and power, and some are willing to sacrifice their lives for this gateway. The guards did not fully fulfill their duties in their posts, as they were already accustomed to dominating in this dark place. The cadres of the Baichuan group smacked their lips, feeling that the food tonight was a bit bland, but as soon as they thought about the big deal made tonight, they began to look forward to it. The bonus is certainly a part of it, but what he is most looking forward to is the one with the unique features of the gang due to the fact that team leader Baichuan likes to treat people to X-shaped dishes. Although this cadre is not interested in this way of eating, he likes to lick the plates very much because the dishes taste very good and often require careful selection. He couldn't help but start looking forward to the arrival of the evening, and even his mind was filled with excitement, to the point where he couldn't help but make a slight tinnitus in his ears. Tinnitus. He patted his ears and felt a bit strange. He turned his head to look at the nearby hand and said, "Did you hear any sound?" The thug looked outside the door and said, "What seems to be the noise?" "Like a car engine." "Yes, it's like something is colliding." The sound went from far to near, and the extreme officials suddenly turned their heads, only to see a car roaring at an extremely fast speed outside the steel door, colliding head-on like a runaway beast. It came too fast, even if it was seen, the body couldn't react in time. The fierce beast of steel came from the front, crushing the iron door under the wheels. In just an instant, the 3 guards were already devastated. Jidao Cadre stood there, looking at the broken door. His facial muscles began to twitch, and an extremely angry emotion dominated his entire body. Dare to drive and crash in. What are you doing? How dare you? Let him let out a tongue-twitching roar. Ki sa ma. Bang. The response to his roar was a gunfire. The extreme officials collapsed, with a hole in the back of their head and a lotus flower blooming on their tongue, resulting in their death. He maintained an angry expression before his death, as if he wanted to defend this extreme group until his death. The car door was opened, and the young man spat out a mouthful of white mist and flicked cigarette ash. He looked around and saw that the security forces were also attracting him. Since it was an extremist organization, there must be a gun in his hand, probably quite a few. This Baichuan group seems to be only at the second rate among many gangsters, but the official number of people is as high as hundreds, indicating how many cannibalistic ghosts have been supported by this huge chain of interests. After glancing at the remaining time of only over 40 minutes, he began to sweep. Yes, sweeping. A person, a gun. Bai Yu has personally experienced how fierce an old man in his peak period is. He is truly capable of easily slaughtering thousands of people, just like the protagonist in Hollywood hero movies who seems to have an immortal body. Because there was no appearance of a second superhero, the entire battle was almost a single-person massacre. Similarly, holding a firearm, if one side hits but the other fails, then the outcome is predetermined. It's like being an FPS player, some are human-drawn, some can kill hundreds in one game. If the latter also has a whole set of cheats, it's a one-sided massacre. The existence of bullet time allowed him to pass the level almost unharmed, and the only injury was due to a shock bullet interfering with the 5 senses. However, as they had already lost their head, by about 30% of the time when the gang was dead or injured, their already limited energy had already dissipated, and other gang members could run and escape. There's nothing to say. The fleeing extremist elements are not worth pursuing, they don't have the time, and there's no need for it. This is a ragtag group of 3 or 5. When Bai Yu walked inside the villa, there were still 3 or 2 security guards left. One of them swung a samurai sword and rushed over, only to fall and insert the tip of the sword into his neck. Faced with a resurrected evil spirit that was killing like a horse, these extreme beings were already scared out of their wits. He walked straight ahead and burst into the conference room. The sound insulation in the conference room is quite good, and the leader of the Baichuan team and another old man with a hanging bottle are celebrating something, talking and laughing. It seems that I haven't noticed what's happening outside yet. Who are you? No one has taught you the rules. After being disturbed during the conversation, Captain Baichuan was extremely dissatisfied. He was a man who looked like a smiling Buddha and seemed like a friendly businessman, but in reality, he was a highly skilled leader with a tattoo. The other old man, on the other hand, had a rather gloomy expression and was actually a businessman. Bai Yu didn't look at these 2 people, but looked at the desk. I killed dozens of people before, and so much blood is enough to cool down my anger slightly. But in the moment he stepped here, he felt that his anger was far from enough. Damn it, these dog coins are still eating female body sheng. Xiao Ri. People who live well always have this kind of abnormal habit. Bai Yu was a bit confused, whether it was her own anger or the anger from Kirishijing Gyro. Perhaps both. He clearly saw the desperate and gloomy gaze of the girl lying on the table. She is already dead. There is a sharp steak knife stuck in the neck. He reached out his hand, but instead of covering her eyes, he turned the round table in a circle, directing her gaze towards the 2 beasts dressed in human skin. Take a good look. He said. Then insert the gun back into your waist. Close the door, lock it, remove the key, and throw it out of the window. Angry flames flowed in his chest, and the cruel demon showed its sharp fangs towards the beasts who deserved to die. He took a step forward because the sound insulation of the room is excellent, no one knows what happened outside the door. I can only hear those sharp voices rising and falling one after another. After 2 dull gunshots, he walked out. Bai Yu walked out holding the girl's body, took off his coat and wrapped it around her. When he walked out of the room, he felt a slight daze. He really doesn't remember some of the scenes just now. Alternatively, the person just now is not him. You don't need to go see the scenes in the conference room anymore, it's just that evil has its consequences, and watching too much can be appetizing. Countdown. 00.19.54, there are still the last 20 minutes. There is no one in the villa anymore, but after so long, the police station of Fusang has not arrived yet. It seems that being too secretive is not a good thing. Bai Yu didn't have time to send the girl's body back. He walked alone back to the main entrance of the estate, pulled out a stool, and then sat on it, silently gazing at the gradually rising fish belly white in the distance. What a sunrise! Bai Yu suddenly heard a voice. He turned around and saw a handsome middle-aged man sitting on a chair. He looked at the sunrise in the sky, leaning against the back of his chair, his whole body rapidly aging, his skin becoming dry, and his figure slightly shrinking. He was already an old man. He looked at the corpses all over the yard and laughed, as if what he saw was not blood, but dust that had been swept away. A vast expanse of white. It's really clean. With his right hand hanging down, the old man leaned against the back of the chair and closed his eyes. There was a hint of a smile on the corner of his mouth, and he returned to eternal sleep. Bai Yu looked deeply at this figure, as if she wanted to engrave it forever in her mind. As the sunrise shone, he also disappeared into place, like a ghost that had never existed before. It's dawn. The morning sun shone on my face. Bai Yu woke up, his neck was a bit sore, and only then did he realize that he had been sleeping on the ground of the warehouse for half a night. He touched his neck, feeling a slight fatigue both mentally and physically. Although he had slept all night, his memory remained intact. He vividly remembers everything that happened last night. When he thought of killing Jidao with the old man, his blood couldn't help but boil. Then he stood up decisively and rushed into the toilet. Ouch! In her previous life, Bai Yu was just an ordinary guaranteed superpower who had never fired a gun or killed anyone, not to mention giving someone lynchy slices of meat with a dining knife. Unfortunately, the memory fragments projected by the heroic spirit are too realistic, and the feeling of ravaging life is incredibly real. Now, without the powerful spirit and aura of the old man's ruthless Ren Xia, he has vomited uncontrollably. Physiological nausea requires time to adapt. Fortunately, Bai Yu didn't eat anything yesterday and only vomited some sour water. But precisely because of this, he is now hungry and eager to eat someone raw, while feeling like he has to vomit everything he eats. After tinkering for 10 minutes, Bai Yu washed himself up and felt the mental stimulation and fluctuations gradually subside before returning to the room. Sitting on the carpet and entering the Chronicles of the Heroes, the prompts followed after completion. Fate has woven, Ren Xia, end curtain, obtain 100 fate points, unlock all information panels of Yingling. Bai Yu clicks on the Yingling option and confirms the Yingling information panel. Kirishijai Jiro, human race, male, age 30, 93, rank. Extraordinary second rank, realm. Real realm, positioning. Physical/assassin, personal occupation. Ren Xia, professional features. Increase damage to all enemies with evil attributes, weaken their momentum, and enhance their own momentum, inherent talent. Killing sense, blue, advanced precision, purple, skills. Proficient in firearms, 87%, proficient in firearms, vehicle driving, 55%, proficient in driving, mysterious. The theory of heroes. Bullet time, first awakening, equipment. Glock 17, 9mm Barabellum pistol cartridge, fit. 70%, quality. 1 star, extreme state, evaluation. 1 star long. Range shooter who has reached the limit of growth, end of this chapter. Chapter 10. Bullet time. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 10. Bullet time. The first hero succeeded. At this moment, Bai Yu's mood was unexpectedly calm, without much excitement. He raised his hand and flipped the information of the spirit, revealing that the flipped page was the face of a card. Unlike the real lifestyle, the card page here is a 2D portrait, featuring a middle-aged man holding a pistol weaving through gunfire. Tongxing's nickname and profession are both Ren Xia. Ren Xia, the first hero obtained by Bai Yu, has a quality of 1 star, which is not very high. But what surprised Bai Yu was that Tongxing was actually a second-order extraordinary. No wonder killing was as simple as eating and drinking water, but that was probably also the peak period. With aging, both his strength and realm declined. Moreover, this hero has reached the limit of growth and cannot continue to increase or strengthen further. So is it the final act? White elm pressed against the center of her eyebrows. After this round of trials, he gradually began to realize the specific usage of his awakened talent, the Chronicles of the Spirit. The original old man should have died in the hands of the head of the Baichuan group, but due to Bai Yu's intervention, his life was forcibly extended for a period of time, thus completely destroying the Baichuan group. Although the outcome of death has not changed, its regret has decreased, which is weaving fate. If Bai Yu is thoughtful, he soon realized again that since the weaving of fate had ended and Mr. Tongxing had also come to an end, it meant that this heroic spirit was already a dead person. It's better to say that all the relics here belong to the deceased. Are all the heroes dead? Bai Yu puzzled and said, no, in my previous recollection, it was mentioned that some people awakened their bloodline as heroes. Perhaps they are all the same names for heroes, but their specific meanings are not the same. Lack of memory and common sense about this world may require finding time to make up for missed classes. Bai Yu refocused her attention on the Yingling card surface. The overall structure of the card surface is very simple. In addition to a flat vertical drawing, there are several noteworthy aspects. Firstly, the star level is displayed in the middle of the lower part of the card surface, where 1 star represents 1 star. Secondly, the title of the hero, Ren Xia, is displayed above the card surface. Finally, there is a row of numbers below Ren Xia, labeled as 27. Bai Yu speculates that this 27 should be a combat power level. He reached out his finger and clicked on the surface of the Yingling card, feeling a touch. Although it was floating in his sight, the Yingling card could touch it. While holding the spirit card in your palm, 3 lines of text appeared next to it, indicating 3 options. Fate weaving, not available. Summoning of heroes, consumes 10 destiny points each time. Projection activation. The option of weaving fate has been understood by Bai Yu, and it is most likely a way to strengthen the spirit. If we consider everything we have just experienced as a simulation of someone else's life, then the potential of this feature, in short, it needs to be developed. Bai Yu couldn't find a more detailed introduction to the ability of summoning spirits, but judging from his identity as a victim of the fraud of the old moon chef Fitch Dog, it is highly likely that he will directly summon spirits and call them out. A second-level extraordinary, just call here. Of course, there will be a certain cost to pay. However, what is consumed is not lifespan or anything else, but rather, fate points. The weaving of the final curtain has earned 100 destiny points, and summoning one requires 1/10 of the cost. Bai Yu pondered silently. He is not sure how many currencies there are in the Chronicles of the Spirit, and usually there are multiple types of currencies in a game to cope with consumption. Similarly, as currency, there is naturally a distinction between valuable and ordinary, with the difference being that the former has a small amount of acquisition and a high demand for consumption. The latter can be obtained through various channels with low difficulty. Simply put, the former corresponds to Krypton, while the latter corresponds to daily scrolling. At present, it is unclear whether fate points can only be obtained by spending money or by brushing the capital. If it is the former, it means it will be a hard currency and cannot be consumed casually. After all, I don't have daily tasks to obtain now, I don't have monthly cards, and I can't earn any money. I'd better be frugal and become a ton mouse. A hint of fatigue appeared on Bai Yu's handsome face. As a person with the ability to follow the minimum rule, it was the first time he had been so frustrated on the issue of money. Moreover, the summoning of heroes is not likely to be permanent and will inevitably require a certain amount of resources. If summoned, one must also feed some fate points every hour, forcing oneself to become a lone party. Bai Yu continues to look down. The third option compared to the high cost of summoning spirits, projection activation, is quite sincere. Activate the heroic projection, all of which are possessed by oneself. The higher the fit, the greater the ability to master the spirit, current fit rate of 70%. Can activate the principles of spirit, inherent talents, skills, equipment, professions. After reading the introduction, Bai Yu immediately understood. If her previous choice was a summoner, then this was the Kamen Rider. The spirit card is equivalent to a belt, and can be transformed by inserting it. Compared to reading the instructions slowly in a short essay, it is easier to understand it directly by getting started. After grasping the card surface, select the third option to activate the projection. At this moment, the card surface held by Bai Yu's right hand suddenly became heavy, and a pistol fell into his palm. It was the Glock 17 that I was so familiar with before. When I opened the magazine, there were 19 bullets inside. The incredibly familiar feeling has returned. It seems like during the final weaving before, my whole body was filled with explosive power from top to bottom. He raised his gun and felt that he could shoot anything in the room, even a mosquito floating in the air could detonate it. The trajectory of the bullet's flight was also incredibly clear in his eyes. And an indescribable sensation flows through the body, like blood flowing through the body, with a feeling that as long as you concentrate, you can grasp it. Concentrate. In an instant, time slowed down. Extending his right hand, his movements were also incredibly slow, and the trajectory of the mosquito vibrating its wings in the air became clear and visible. With a gentle palm grip, the little bug lay in the palm's heart. The doctrine of heroes. Bullet time. Once this ability is activated, the body sensation time flow rate will become slow, which is a coveted ability for gunmen. With the blessing of bullet time, Tongsheng can empty the magazine within 2 seconds. Bai Yu can't achieve this yet. He feels that firing 3 bullets in just 1 second is the limit. By the way, take a look at the panel. Bai Yu opens the Chronicles of the Spirit and switches to her own character interface. Destiny Editor, Ren Xia, Projection Activation, Rank. Extraordinary Level, Job Description. Ren Xia, Inherent Talent. Sense of Killing Intention, Skills. Proficient in Firearms, 60%. Proficient in Driving, Vehicle Driving, 35%. Entering the Room, Mysterious. The Theory of Heroes. Bullet Time, Comprehensive Level. 11, is this. Stepping into the extraordinary. Bai Yu was a bit surprised, it was too easy, right? However, after thinking for a moment, it was normal for him. After all, this was an extraordinary second-level spirit projection. He had gained almost all the blessings, and there was nothing incomprehensible about his brief transcendence. However, 70% of the fit is not high enough, which also leads to the inability of the panel of Yingling to be fully inherited. Without a talent for advanced precision, the average level of skills has also decreased by 1 level. A more intuitive thing is the comprehensive level. Although Tongsheng's level is clearly 27, why is he only 11 now? Even if it's 70%, it should be over 20 levels. After opening the comprehensive level, Bai Yu received an answer from the system. The comprehensive level is taken as 70% of the average of the two. 27 plus 5, divided by 2 times 0.7 almost equals 11. There is no problem with math in elementary school. After all, it's just that I'm too bad. Bai Yu reflected on herself, mine. It's not the old man's pot, it's not the young people of this generation. But he also noticed the problem with this equation. If his level was raised to level 27 or above, wouldn't activating this spirit actually lead to a decrease in his level? But that's also about the future. It's not a problem that needs to be considered at this stage. Bai Yu tried twice more bullet time and found himself a bit tired. It is obvious that even with the blessing of the projection of the spirit, one who is too weak to fully utilize this power. Can a young child drive a mud truck well? Turning off the activated state of projection, the energy on his body dissipated, and his overall level fell back to level 5 once again. Suddenly, there was a feeling of disappointment and loss. It's like getting used to Crazy Thursday and suddenly one day forcing yourself to quit. I've been a bit addicted this time. No wonder there are so many disciples of the Wind Spirit Moon Shadow sect. Once they get used to it, they can't go back. Bai Yu picked up the metal shell on the ground, found a rope to string it up, and tied it to his wrist as a talisman. With the power of the first hero, he finally felt like he had found a place to stand. My inner peace of mind is no less than finding a handgun and a bulletproof vest in a war-torn area. At least I now have the qualification to compete with the Grim Reaper. Bai Yu looked down at the blank space under her feet and said, I will find your shadow and childhood sweetheart for you. Young man. Bai Yu changed into a coat, picked up the key, and walked towards the door with a fully charged phone. He plans to visit the school today to see the situation and take a textbook to supplement basic knowledge. After leaving the community, he felt a bit hungry and decided to find a roadside stall to solve the problem. The technological level of this world does not seem to differ significantly from that of the 21st century, and may even be more advanced in some aspects, but also somewhat backward in some aspects. Under the worldview of automatic firearms, there is still the existence of the shogunate. It's a bit unbelievable, haven't the neon lights in this world experienced the Meiji Restoration? He took a few steps, and at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, many breakfast shops had just opened, and one of them could smell the fragrance from afar. A bowl of pork liver and shredded pork noodles, he shouted directly. At this moment, an old woman with slightly graying hair walked out of the kitchen, about 50 years old. She wrapped her waist around an apron and smiled, okay, please wait a moment. There were not many people in the shop, and Bai Yu looked at the old woman rubbing her face, feeling a bit familiar. She also looked over 50 years old. This noodle shop is not very big, but it is also clean and tidy. The decoration style is somewhat Japanese, and there are ramen noodles on the menu. Most Japanese ingredients are in small quantities and expensive, so this shop doesn't seem to be priced by an ice cream assassin, does it? Here comes the noodles. The old woman walked up to her with a gentle smile. A bowl of noodles was quickly handed to her, and Bai Yu took out her wallet, intending to confirm the price. How much is it? 12. The old woman pointed to the side and said, you don't need to be polite if you want Xiao Kai to do it yourself. Bai Yu paid and then sat down with peace of mind to eat noodles. He noticed a few group photos on the wall of the store and looked at them, then suddenly froze. He stared intently at the photo on the wall and didn't come to his senses for a while. The old woman didn't hear any commotion, so she lifted her head and noticed that Bai Yu's gaze was fixed on the wall. The person on this wall is. Bai Yu pointed to a photo on the wall, in which a girl with short hair draped over her shoulders sat on a chair in a student uniform. Her features were exquisite, and even some photos from certain eras did not affect her dignified appearance and delicate features. Her resilient temperament could not be broken by the wind and rain. The old woman also looked at the picture frame on the wall and smiled, saying, she's very beautiful, isn't she? Bai Yu nodded, but his inner thoughts were not whether she was beautiful or not, but rather the name of the girl he remembered clearly. Her name was Xiexin. End of this chapter.